tried to walk away from her more times than I will ever admit out loud. Not because she hurt me, not because love became too heavy, but because something about her presence made me see myself too clearly, and sometimes the truth is the hardest place to stay. Have you ever met someone who did not chase you, did not beg you, did not force your heart open, yet somehow became the room your soul kept returning to? That was her for me. Quiet, quiet, steady. Impossible to forget. She was not a storm. She was a mirror. And every time I looked away, I still carried the reflection with me. I carried the fears I had not healed, the tenderness I had hidden. The man I was becoming, even when I did not know how to become him yet. And maybe this is where love begins, not in certainty, but in the courage to stop running from what feels true. So tell me, have you ever tried to leave someone behind, only to realize your heart had already chosen where home was? I used to think walking away meant strength. I thought if I could keep moving, keep my face calm, keep my hands busy, then maybe I could convince myself that what I felt was just a passing thing. A beautiful interruption. A soft ache that would fade if I gave it enough distance. I told myself she was only a chapter, not the whole meaning. I told myself I could outgrow the pull. I could put enough silence between us until the feeling forgot my name. But love does not always leave when you ask it to. Sometimes it sits quietly beside you. Sometimes it follows you into ordinary moments, into empty rooms, into late thoughts, into the part of your chest where you keep the things you pretend you do not need. And she stayed there. Not loudly, not dramatically, just there. Like a candle left burning in a house I thought I had abandoned. I would go through my days pretending I was fine, pretending I had made peace with the distance, and then something simple would bring her back. A certain kind of silence. A small kindness from a stranger, the way light softened across a wall. And suddenly, I would remember how it felt to be seen by her. Not admired, not entertained, seen. There is a difference, isn't there? To be admired can make you feel powerful for a moment, but to be seen can make you feel naked in your own soul. But here's the truth. I've never told anyone. I was not afraid of losing her as much as I was afraid of what loving her asked me to become. She did not ask with words. She did not stand in front of me demanding change. Her presence did something more powerful than that. It reflected me. It showed me where I was guarded, where I was proud, where I called my fear wisdom, where I called my distance peace. And, and I hated that at first. I wanted love to feel easy because easy would not require me to grow. Easy would not ask me to lay down the armor I had mistaken for identity. Have you felt this too? That strange trembling when someone's goodness touches the parts of you that still do not know how to receive. I wanted to trust her. I wanted to let my heart rest. But trust is not a door that opens just because love knocks. Sometimes trust is a house we have to rebuild slowly, board by board, breath by breath. I had carried too many quiet fractures into that connection. I had learned how to survive by not needing too much, by not asking for reassurance, by leaving emotionally before anyone could leave me first. So when she came close, my heart did what wounded hearts do. It searched for danger in the very place that offered peace. And still, I could not walk away. That is the part that humbled me, because every excuse I made sounded strong until I was alone with it. I would say, maybe the timing is wrong. Maybe I need to focus on myself. Maybe love should not feel this deep. Maybe I am romanticizing what I do not understand. But beneath every reason was the same quiet truth. I was afraid. Afraid that if I stayed, she would see all of me, not just the composed parts, not just the ambitious parts, not just the version of me that knew how to speak beautifully about dreams and destiny. She would see the trembling, the uncertainty, the child in me still waiting for love to prove it would not disappear. This is where everything I thought I knew changed. I realized walking away was not always freedom. Sometimes walking up away is just fear wearing a brave face. Sometimes we leave not because the connection is wrong, but because it is too honest, too clean, too calm, too much like a mirror we cannot manipulate. And she was that mirror for me. I looked into her presence and saw the man I wanted to be, and standing beside the man I was still healing from. I saw my tenderness and my pride in the same reflection. I saw my longing for home and my habit of standing outside this. Look at me, Swene, I say this. There are people who enter your life and awaken your hunger. They make you want more, run faster, prove harder. But then there are people who awaken your truth. They do not make you perform. They make you breathe. They do not make love feel like a battlefield. They make it feel like a room where you can finally put down what you have been carrying. She felt like that. Not perfect, not magical in some impossible way, just real. Real enough to make my defenses feel unnecessary, real enough to make my silence feel heavy, real enough to make me wonder, what if love is not supposed to exhaust us? What if love, at its deepest, is the place where our nervous heart learns to unclench? I think that is why I kept turning back. Not because I was weak, not because I could not move on, but because something in me knew that some connections are not meant to be explained too quickly. Some connections ask to be honored before they are understood. And maybe I did not know what to do with a love that did not arrive as chaos. I was used to chasing intensity and calling it passion. I was used to confusing uncertainty with depth. But with her, the feeling was different. It was calmer. And that calm scared me because I had mistaken peace for emptiness before. I had mistaken steadiness for a lack of fire. But she's taught me, without trying, that fire does not always roar. Sometimes it glows. Sometimes it warms the whole room without burning the house down. Before you go, hear this one thing. I did try to leave. I tried to place her gently in the past. I tried to become someone who could speak about her without feeling that quiet pull inside my chest. But every time I convinced my mind, my heart would whisper something softer, something truer. Not yet. Not because I owned her. Not because love gave me a right to her life. But because there was still something sacred in the reflection. There was still something I needed to face in myself. She became the mirror where I saw my fears, my truths, my tenderness, and the version of myself I was still becoming. And maybe that is the beginning of real vulnerability. Not the dramatic expression. Not the grand promise. But the moment you stop lying to yourself, the moment you admit, I care, I still care, I do not have all the answers, but I know this mattered. I know she mattered. I know some part of me became more honest because of her. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is the first honest brick in the foundation of trust. It is saying, I am scared, but I will not let fear be the only architect of my life. It is saying, I have been hurt, but I will not make my past the gatekeeper of every future blessing. So I bless the part of me that tried to run. It was only trying to protect me. I bless the part of me that stayed tender. It was trying to guide me home. And I bless her quietly, wherever she is in the story, for being the mirror I did not know I needed. May every heart that has been afraid to stay find the courage to be honest. May every person who has mistaken distance for safety learn the beauty of presence. And may you, listening to this, remember that the love you cannot easily explain may not be here to confuse you, may be here to reveal you. Trust did not arrive in me and came more like a hand, trembling toward us or unsure to whether it would welcome or bruised again. After I admitted I could not walk away from her, I still had to face the quieter question: could I stay without hiding? Because staying is not only about presence. Staying is about being seen in the moments when your confidence thins and your old fears begin speaking louder than your hope. With her, I learned that trust is not a promise we demand. It is a foundation we build by returning truthfully. I had spent so much of my life measuring love by words. I wanted someone to say the right thing, make the right promise, give me enough certainty to quiet every doubt inside me. But she taught me that presence is deeper than performance. She did not have to decorate the room with guarantees. She simply showed up with a steadiness I could not ignore. Her calm made my fear feel noisy. Her patience made my guardedness feel tired. Have you ever been loved in a way that did not push, yet somehow reached the places force never could? That was her gift. But here is the confession I carry carefully. I did not know how to trust calm love at first. I had become familiar with love that kept me guessing, love that made my heart run laps around uncertainty and call it devotion. So when something peaceful stood before me, I questioned it. I wondered if it was real because it did not ache in the ways I recognized. I wondered if I was missing some warning sign because my body had learned to confuse anxiety with intuition. Sometimes healing feels suspicious when chaos has been your teacher. Sometimes it feels empty before it feels safe. I remember realizing that trust was asking something humble of me. It was asking me to stop treating every tender moment like evidence in a trial. It was asking me to stop searching her silences for abandonment, stop reading distance into pauses, stop preparing an exit before love had even entered the room. That kind of honesty is not easy. It exposes the ways we sabotage what we prayed for because receiving requires surrender, and surrender can feel like standing without armor in a world that once taught you armor was survival. Still, something in me wanted to learn a softer way. This is where everything shifted for me. I began to see that she was not responsible for healing every wound someone else left behind. She was not there to pay for old betrayals. She was not there to prove love is safe every single moment because my fear demanded constant evidence. She was a person, not a remedy. She was a mirror, not a bandage. And the mirror showed me this. If I wanted to love her with any real dignity, I had to stop making her carry the weight of ghosts she never invited into our story. That realization made me gentler. Not perfect, but gentler. I started listening to my fear without obeying it. I started asking myself, is this truth or is this an old wound speaking in a familiar voice? I started noticing how often I wanted reassurance when what I really needed was courage. Because love cannot grow where every breath is a test. Love needs room. Love needs trust. Love needs two people willing to bring their whole selves without turning the other into a courtroom. With her, I began to understand that trust is not blindness. It is chosen openness. And maybe the most beautiful part was this. She did not make trust feel like a cage. She made it feel like a home with windows open. There was space to breathe, space to be quiet, space to be unfinished. I did not feel forced to become someone impressive. I felt invited to become someone true. That is rare, isn't it? To be near someone who does not pull you away from yourself, but brings you closer. To feel that love is not a performance, not a negotiation, not a storm, but a place where your spirit can finally lower its voice. Before you go, hear this part closely. Trust is not built by grand speeches. It is built in the small returns. The message answered with care. The truth spoken before resentment grows. The apology offered without pride. The patience given even when fear forgets how to breathe. I began to understand that love is less about never disappointing each other and more about repairing with tenderness when you do. It requires presence. It requires us to show up again and again. Not because we are certain of everything, but because something sacred deserves our honesty. With her, I felt the quiet invitation to become more reliable in my own heart. I could not ask her to trust me if I kept betraying myself. I could not ask for peace if I kept feeding confusion. So I began there with the foundation beneath my own feet. Learned to name what I felt instead of disguising it. I learned to pause before disappearing. I learned that maturity is not having no fear. Maturity is not letting fear drive every decision. And somehow, through that learning, I felt closer to her without needing to hold too tightly. So I bless the trust that came slowly, because slow trust often grows deep roots. I bless the woman who showed me that calm love can still be powerful. That presence can speak louder than promises, and that patience can become a language of devotion. I bless the version of me that was scared but stayed willing. May you remember that the love meant to grow you will not always rush you. Sometimes it will stand quietly before you, reflecting your truth, waiting for you to believe that peace can be real. Intimacy began for me when I stopped trying to impress her and started allowing myself to be known by her. That sounds simple, but it was one of the hardest doors I ever opened because being known is different from being desired. Desire can live on the surface for a while, can survive on mystery, on distance, on the beautiful idea we create of each other when we are still careful with our edges. But being known asks for something deeper. It asks us to bring the hidden rooms into the light. It asks us to let someone see the unfinished places without pretending they are already healed. With her, I felt that invitation. Not as pressure, not as demand, but as a quiet warmth beside me, asking, "Can you let me meet the real you now?" I had spent years learning how to be strong in ways that kept people at a safe distance. I could speak with conviction. I could dream loudly. I could carry responsibility without letting anyone see the weight of it. But she noticed the pauses between my words. She noticed when my confidence became a shield. She saw the smile I used when I did not want to explain the ache underneath it. And somehow, that did not make me feel exposed in a cruel way. It made me feel gently found. Have you ever been with someone whose presence makes your own hiding feel unnecessary? That was the intimacy I began to understand. It was not about closeness alone. It was about relief. But here is the truth that still softens me. I did not know how to receive that kind of closeness without testing it. A part of me kept waiting for the moment she would turn away. A part of me believed that if someone truly saw the tender, complicated, uncertain parts of me, they would quietly decide I was too much to hold. So I would reveal a little, then retreat. I would offer honesty, then cover it with humor. I would step toward her, then pretend I had not moved at all. Fear can make us dance strangely around the love we actually want. It can make us for connection while protecting ourselves from its depth. This is where she became the mirror again. She reflected back not only what I feared, but what I was capable of becoming when I stopped treating intimacy like danger. In her presence, I saw that love does not need every wound explained perfectly before it begins to heal. Sometimes it only needs a safe place. to breathe. Sometimes it needs one patient conversation, admission, one moment where the soul says, I am tired of pretending I do not need tenderness. And I was tired. I was tired of being almost open. Tired of standing at the edge of closeness and calling that wisdom. Tired of wanting home while refusing to enter. With her, intimacy felt less like being consumed and more like being welcomed. That mattered to me. Because I had known forms of closeness that felt like pressure, like performance, like the slow disappearance of the self. But this was different. She did not ask me to become smaller so she could feel secure. She did not need my dreams to shrink so love could have room. Instead, her presence seemed to make more room inside me. Room for ambition and softness. Room for purpose and rest. Room for silence that did not feel like punishment. That is a rare harmony, isn't it? To feel close to someone and still feel free. Before you go, hear this one thing clearly. Real intimacy is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to keep choosing honesty even when fear sits beside you. It is telling the truth gently before distance turns into a wall. It is saying, this is what hurt me without trying to punish. It is saying, this is what I need without shame. It is saying, I am still learning how to trust closeness, but I do not want to run from it anymore. That kind of love requires patience. It requires presence. It requires two people willing to protect the connection instead of protecting their pride. I began to discern that intimacy is built in the ordinary moments we almost overlook. The way someone listens without rushing to fix you. The way they remember the small things you thought no one noticed. The ways they can sit beside your silence without making it feel like failure. The way their calm becomes a shelter, not a cage. With her, I understood that love is not always proven by grand gestures. Sometimes it is proven by attention, by consistency, by the quiet choice to remain tender when life gives you many reasons to harden. And maybe she made tenderness why could not possible again. Because still, intimacy asked me to grow. It asked me to stop confusing privacy with emotional absence. It asked me to understand that I could keep sacred parts of myself without locking every door. There is a balance there, a kind of harmony. Love does not require us to pour ourselves out until we are empty. It asks us to share from a place of truth, not fear. It asks us to become a home with open rooms and strong foundations. And with her, I wanted to become that kind of home. I wanted my presence to feel steady, I wanted my words to have roots. I wanted my love to be calm enough to be trusted. So I bless the intimacy that did not rush me, the closeness that waited until my heart remembered how to unclench. I bless the mirror she became, reflecting not only my fear, but my capacity for softness. May you find the courage to be known without abandoning yourself. May you learn that the right kind of love does not steal your voice. It helps you hear it more clearly. And may the person your heart keeps returning to remind you that being truly seen can feel less like exposure and more like grace. Growth did not feel like becoming someone new for her. It felt like finally becoming honest enough to meet what her presence had awakened in me. After vulnerability taught me to stop running, after trust taught me to stop testing, and after intimacy taught me to stop hiding, growth asked a deeper question. Would I become steady enough to love without turning fear into distance? I used to think love was only about feeling deeply, but she made me understand that depth without maturity can still wound. A heart can be sincere and still unready. A soul can long for home and still not know how to build one. That truth humbled me because I had ambition in my bones. I could dream beyond the room I was standing in. I could see futures before they had shape. I could push through exhaustion, call it purpose. But love asked for a different kind of greatness. It asked me to be present. It asked me to listen when my mind wanted to defend. It asked me to slow down enough to notice what my heart was avoiding. Have you ever realized that the person you love does not need your brightest performance as much as your most honest presence? That realization changed me quietly. With her, I began to see that shared purpose is not two people chasing the same dream at the same speed. Sometimes it is two souls learning how to walk beside each other without forcing the other to match every step. I wanted a love that could hold vision, not just emotion. I wanted us to be more than a beautiful feeling. I wanted us to become a place where tenderness and purpose could live together, where we could encourage each other without competing on and first ceasing when the connection itself. But here is what I had to confess. I had sometimes used ambition to avoid intimacy. That is not easy to admit. It is simpler to say I was focused, disciplined, driven, and maybe I was. But sometimes, beneath all that movement, I was also hiding. I hid in work because work rewarded control. I hid in plans because plans made me feel safe. I hid in the future because the present asked me to be emotionally available. And she, without accusation, reflected that back to me. She became the mirror where I saw that becoming successful and becoming whole were not the same thing. One could fill a room with applause. The other could finally let love enter. This is where everything softened inside me. I realized growth was not about proving I was worthy of her. It was about becoming truthful enough to receive what was already sacred. Love that feels calm, not chaotic, does not ask us to abandon our purpose. It asks us to purify it. It asks why we are running, who we are becoming, and whether the life we are building has room for the people who make it meaningful. What good is a dream if it costs you the heart that made you want to become better in the first place? I began to understand timing differently too. I used to think timing was something outside of us, something written in the distance between two live lives. But sometimes timing is also the condition of our own hearts. Sometimes the moment is not wrong. We are simply still learning how to stand inside it with courage. She taught me patience without preaching it. Her presence reminded me that some things cannot be rushed into beauty. Trust needs rhythm. Love needs roots. A mirror needs stillness before it can show you clearly. And I needed stillness because I had been moving too fast to recognize myself. Before you go, hear this one thing. Growth will often feel like loss before it feels like freedom. You may lose the habit of disappearing. You may lose the pride that kept you lonely. You may lose the story that says love must be dramatic to be real. I had to lose the version of myself that confused emotional distance with strength. I had to lose the part of me that wanted love but feared responsibility. And in that losing, I found something quieter, something stronger. I found the beginning of a man who could stay without needing to control everything. And she did not force that man out of me. That, which is why the connection mattered so deeply. She did not drag me into growth. She simply stood as a mirror. And in that reflection, I could no longer pretend I was satisfied with half-open living. Her calm asked me to rise. Her tenderness asked me to soften. Her truth asked me to become truthful. Isn't that what the rarest love does? It does not shame you for being unfinished. It simply makes unfinished no longer feel like a place where you want to stay forever. So I started choosing small forms of growth. I chose to speak instead of withdraw. I chose to listen instead of prepare my defense. I chose to be present even when my mind was full of tomorrow. I chose to let her matter without turning that mattering into fear. And every small choice became a brick in the foundation. It was not glamorous. It was not loud. But love is often built in quiet construction. It requires patience. It requires presence. It requires us to show up in the ordinary moments where no one applauds, but the soul remembers. Now, I believe some people enter our lives not to distract us from our purpose, but to reveal the purpose beneath the purpose. She reminded me that I did not only want to build something impressive. I wanted to build something meaningful. I wanted a life where love could breathe, where trust had walls, where tenderness had a table, where two people could sit together and the dream was not only ahead of them, but between them. May you find the courage to grow toward the love that reflects your truest self, and may that growth bring you peace. Patience became the place where my love for her stopped trying to prove itself and started learning how to breathe. I had already seen my fear, my guardedness, my hunger to become better, but now I had to face the hardest lesson. Not everything true is meant to be rushed. Some connections arrive with a depth that makes the heart want immediate answers, yet the soul knows answers. So far, it's without readiness can become another kind of pressure. With her, I learned that love is not always a door we break open. Sometimes it is a garden we must water gently daily. I used to struggle with waiting because waiting made me feel powerless. I wanted movement, certainty, direction, some sign that my heart had chosen a road leading nowhere. But she taught me, even in silence, that patience is not the absence of progress. It is progress happening beneath the surface, where roots learn their strength before flowers ask for attention. Have you ever cared for someone so deeply that the quiet between you felt both painful and sacred? That was the kind of waiting I knew with her. It stretched me. It revealed me. It made every hidden fear speak. But here is the truth I had to confess to myself. Sometimes I wanted timing to be the villain because it was easier than admitting I was still afraid. I could say life was complicated. I could say the moment was not ready. I could say there were too many unknowns between us. Yet beneath those explanations, I could feel another question breathing inside me. Was I willing to become the kind of man who could meet love with presence instead of panic. Timing mattered, yes, but readiness mattered too. And readiness was not something I could fake for her. She became the mirror again, not by demanding an answer from me, but by reflecting the difference between urgency and devotion. Urgency says, give me certainty now so I do not have to sit with my fear, says. Devotion says, I will honor what is real without forcing it to bloom before its season. That difference changed me. I began to understand that love does not become deeper because we grip it harder. Love becomes deeper when we create a safe place for it to unfold. It requires patience. It requires presence. It requires trust in what cannot yet be seen. This is where everything softened into something almost holy. I stopped seeing patience as delay and began seeing it as respect. Respect for her heart. Respect for my own growth. Respect for the unseen work happening between two people who care but are still learning how to carry that care, how wisely. Real love cannot be bullied into maturity. It cannot be dragged across the floor of our fear and still remain tender. If it is meant to become home, then the foundation must be laid with calm hands. And calm hands are learned slowly through humility, honesty, and restraint. I also learned that patience does not mean passivity. It is not sitting back while life decides everything for you. It is choosing your next step with tenderness instead of anxiety. It is checking your intentions before you speak. It is asking whether your desire to move closer is rooted in love or in the need to ache uncertainty. With her, I had to ask myself that often. Did I want to reach for her because I cherished her or because silence made me uncomfortable? Did I want connection, or did I simply want relief from longing? Before you go, hear this one thing. Longing can be beautiful, but longing is not the same as love. Longing reaches, love also protects. Longing wants to be answered, love wants to be worthy of the answer. That was the lesson she placed before me without saying it directly. If I truly cared, I could not treat her heart like a destination for my loneliness. I had to bring wholeness, not just hunger. I had to bring presence, just poetry. I had to become someone whose tenderness had discipline, whose devotion had roots, whose patience had purpose. And in that waiting, I discovered something unexpected. I discovered that she was not only teaching about love, she was teaching me about faith in the quiet work of becoming. Not faith as something loud or certain, but faith as the soft decision to keep your heart open without forcing life to obey your timeline. That kind of faith feels vulnerable. It feels like standing before a mirror and admitting I do not control everything, but I can still choose integrous care. I can still choose not to let fear make me harsh. So I began to bless the space between us instead of cursing it. I began to see that distance does not always mean absence. Sometimes distance is where clarity grows. Sometimes silence is where the heart learns whether it is attached to fantasy or devoted to truth. And the more I sat with that truth, the more I understood why I could not walk away. She was not a distraction from my path. She was part of the path that showed me how to walk with more grace, less fear, more honesty, less need to control the ending. May you learn to trust the seasons of your own heart. May you stop calling every pause a punishment and start asking what tenderness is trying to teach you there. May the love that matters to you never be rushed by fear, pride, or loneliness, but tended with patience, protected by presence, and guided by truth. And if someone has become the mirror you cannot forget, may you have the courage to honor the reflection without breaking the glass. May what is real find its rhythm, and may that rhythm bring peace to both hearts. Purpose became the quiet bridge between what I felt for her and what I was willing to build. Because love, if it is real, eventually asks for shape. It cannot live forever as longing, memory, or a beautiful ache we revisit when the room is silent. It needs hands. It needs habits. It needs a life wide enough to hold tenderness and responsibility together. With her, I began to understand that shared purpose is not some grand speech about forever. It is two people asking softly and honestly, what are we becoming together? And can our becoming make both hearts more whole? I used to think purpose meant chasing something bigger than myself. And maybe it does, but she showed me that bigger is not always louder. Sometimes bigger is learning how to love without abandoning the works your soul came here to do. Sometimes bigger is making room at the table for another person's dreams without shrinking your own. Have you ever met someone who did not distract you from your calling, but somehow made it feel more sacred? That was what happened with her. My ambition did not disappear around her. It became quieter, cleaner, more human, and less desperate for applause. But here is the confession that still humbles me. I was afraid that love would cost me my direction. I had seen people lose themselves in connection, confusing attachment for devotion, mistaking constant sacrifice for loyalty. I feared becoming smaller. I feared waking up one day and realizing I had traded my purpose for comfort. Yet when I looked at her, really looked, I did not see a cage. I saw a mirror reflecting the kind of life where love and purpose could stand beside each other, not as enemies, but as two lamps lighting the same room with gentle patience. This is where everything I believed about love began to change. I realized the right connection does not steal your future. It asks whether your future has a heart. It asks whether the success you seek will still feel meaningful if no one can recognize your tenderness inside it. She made me wonder what kind of man I wanted to become after the dream came true. Would I be present? Would I be kind? Would I have built a life that looked, Luke, impressive from the outside, but felt empty at the center? These questions did not accuse me. They awakened me. With her, shared purpose felt like balance, like harmony, like two hands learning the same rhythm without forcing the same movement. It was not about agreeing on every detail. It was about honoring the direction of the heart. It was about building a foundation where trust could live, where ambition did not become neglect, where closeness did not be. I wanted a love calm enough to support growth and honest enough to correct drift. I wanted us to be able to dream without disappearing from each other, to work without becoming strangers, to rest without feeling peace, for needing peace. Hear this one thing. A connection that mirrors your soul will not always flatter you. Sometimes it will ask better questions than comfort ever could. It will ask if your priorities are aligned with your peace. It will ask if your words have roots. It will ask if the love you speak of is visible, is how you show up when life is ordinary, inconvenient, and quiet. She became that question for me. Not a burden, not an interruption, but a sacred invitation to stop separating who I wanted to be from how I loved. And maybe that is what made her impossible to forget. She did not only touch my heart, she touched my direction. Her presence made me want a life that was not just successful, but sincere. A life where home was not a place I returned to after becoming exhausted by the world, but a foundation from which I could meet the world with strength. Love, in that sense, became less like escape and more like alignment. It reminded me that the deepest partnerships are not built by two perfect people, but by two willing people choosing truth repeatedly. I began to see that presence mattered more than promises, because promises without presence become beautiful empty. Anyone can speak of loyalty when the sky is clear. Anyone can imagine devotion when the heart is warm. But shared purpose is revealed in the small decisions, and how we protect trust when pride wants victory, and how we make time when life grows crowded, in how we remember that the person beside us is not an accessory to the dream, but part of why the dream should matter. Love comes real where intention becomes rhythm. So I stopped asking whether she fit into the life I had planned, and I started asking whether the life I had planned was honest enough to include what she awakened in me. That question changed everything. It made me more careful with my energy, more aware of my silences, more committed to becoming steady. I did not want to offer her a version of myself that only appeared in poetic moments. I wanted my care to have structure. I wanted my affection to have discipline. I wanted the mirror to reflect a man who was no longer running. May you find a love that does not pull you away from your purpose, but purifies it. May you meet someone whose presence teaches you that peace can be powerful, that ambition can be tender, and that home can be both a resting place and a beginning. May you stop choosing between your heart and your calling and begin building a life where both can breathe. And if she has become the mirror where your soul sees its truest direction, may you honor that reflection with patience, presence, and courage. Meaning arrived when I stopped asking whether she was mine and started asking what her presence was teaching my soul. By then, I had already tried to run, learn to trust, open myself to intimacy, grown through patience, and looked at purpose with softer eyes. Yet meaning asked for a deeper surrender, because love is not always proven by possession. Sometimes love is proven by reverence. Sometimes the person you cannot walk is not only someone you want beside you, but someone who helps you recognize the truth you were born to live with. That was the part I resisted most. I wanted love to be simple enough to hold in my hands, simple enough to explain, simple enough to place inside a plan and protect from uncertainty. but she never fit into the small definitions I tried to use. She was bigger than an answer. She was a mirror, and mirrors do not belong to us. They reveal us. Have you ever met someone whose presence made your own soul feel less hidden? Someone who did not rescue you from life, but returned you to yourself. That is what she became for me. But here is the truth I had to whisper before I could finally breathe. I could love her deeply and still not control the shape of the story. That frightened me because a part of me believed meaning had to end in certainty to be real. I thought if something mattered, it had to become permanent in the way I imagined. Yet, life kept teaching me that sacred things are not always owned. Some are honored, some are carried. Some become part of the foundation beneath our becoming, whether they stay close or move quietly beyond our reach. This is where my heart changed its language. I stopped saying, "Why can't I forget her?" as if remembering her were a wound to be ashamed of. I started saying, "What did she awaken in me that I must not abandon?" That question felt cleaner. It removed the panic. It brought to me back responsibility, not control. Because if she had reflected my tenderness, then I had to live tenderly. If she had reflect my truth, then I had to stop betraying it. If she had shown me peace, then I had to become peaceful too. Before you go, hear this one thing. Some people become meaning in our lives not because they complete us, but because they remind us we were never meant to live divided from ourselves. She did that. She stood in my memory like a calm light in the hallway, not forcing me to enter, but reminding me there was a door toward honesty, a door toward presence, a door toward love that feels like home, not hunger. And maybe that is why I kept turning back, because something in me recognized the doorway. I began to understand that the deepest connections do not always shout. They do not need chaos to feel powerful. They do not need constant urgency to prove they matter. Her presence felt calm, and that calm became a kind of truth. It showed me that love can be steady and still be alive, soft and still be strong, quiet and still change everything. I had spent so long listening for thunder that I almost missed the blessing of a gentle voice. But the soul knows. The soul hears what fear tries to dismiss. And still, meaning did not make me passive. It made me more awake. It made me want to live in a way that honored what I had felt. I wanted my choices to become more honest. I wanted my ambition to have mercy in it. Wanted my presence to become a place of safety, not confusion. She had reflected the man I was becoming, and now I had to decide whether I would keep becoming him when no one was watching. That is where love becomes sacred, not in the feeling alone, but in the transformation it leaves behind. This is the confession I never expected to make. I am grateful for what I could not control. I am grateful that my heart was interrupted by something real enough to humble me. I am grateful that she showed me the difference between attachment and devotion, between fear and intuition, between noise and peace. I am grateful that I could not walk away easily because that struggle forced me to listen more deeply. It forced me to ask what kind of love I wanted to give, not just what kind of love I wanted to receive. Maybe meaning is not a final explanation. Maybe it is the tenderness after we stop demanding one. Maybe it is the way one person's reflection teaches us how to stand closer to our own truth. With her, I saw my fears, my longness, my softness, my unfinished courage. I saw the part of me that wanted home and the part of me that was still learning how to become it. And instead of hating that reflection, I began to bless it. I began to understand that being revealed is a gift. So may you never curse the connection that made you honest. May you never reduce a sacred mirror to a simple outcome. May you honor the love that showed you your own depth, even if the path is slow, even if the answers are quiet, even if the story asks for patience. May the one you cannot forget lead you back to the parts of yourself you were meant to reclaim. And may you remember that love is not only the dream we chase. Sometimes it is the truth that teaches us how to live. Now I stand at the end of this confession, and I understand something I could not hold at the beginning. She was never only the woman I could not walk away from. She was the mirror that taught why I kept leaving myself. Every step toward her became a step inward. Every ache became a question. Every silence asked whether I would choose fear again or finally choose truth. Have you ever reached the end of a longing and realized the longing was also leading you home? That is what her presence did to me, gently and without force. I used to believe love proved itself by staying visible, by becoming something I could name, touch, and explain to every doubtful part of me. But the deeper truth is softer. Some love proves itself by changing the way you stand in your own life. She made me braver with my tenderness. She made me less willing to betray my peace for the comfort of familiar chaos. She made me ask whether I was building a heart someone could trust. Not because she demanded it, but because her reflection made pretending impossible. And that kind of honesty becomes sacred slowly. But here is the truth I want to place carefully in your hands. I do not know every ending, and maybe I was never meant to. I only know that some people arrive like answers, and others arrive like mirrors. She was both. She answered questions I did not yet have words for, and she reflected questions I had spent years avoiding. What do you do with someone who reveals your soul so quietly? You stop treating love like a possession. You start treating it like a responsibility. You become gentler with yourself and more reverent with them each day. This is where I learned that peace can be the deepest proof. I had searched for signs in intensity, in urgency, in the ache that keeps you awake and calls itself destiny. Yet with her, the sign was calm. It was the way my spirit stopped performing. It was the way ambition no longer needed to be armor. It was the way silence could sit between us without becoming a threat. Love that feels calm is not empty. The strong walls with open windows and a table where truth can sit without fear of being turned away. Before you go, hear this one thing from the most honest place in me. If there is someone your heart keeps returning to, do not rush to call it weakness. Sit with it. Listen without worshiping the ache. Ask what it is trying to reveal. Is it love, or is it fear wearing perfume? Is it devotion, or the old wound asking to be chosen again? The mirror will tell you if you are brave enough to look. She taught me that real love does not confuse longing with ownership. Real love blesses, protects, and waits with dignity and grace too. I think the reason I could not walk away, was not because the story was perfect, but because the reflection was true. Perfection would have been easier to dismiss because perfection is often fantasy dressed beautifully. Truth is harder. Truth follows you into ordinary rooms. Truth sits beside you when distractions fade. Truth asks whether you are living aligned with the love you claim to believe in. She became that question for me. Could I be steady? Could I be present? Could I love without turning tenderness into fear? Could I let a good thing be good without suspicion again? And maybe that is the final blessing I can offer her. whether she is near or far, whether the road bends toward us or teaches us separately. I bless the way she made me softer without making me smaller. I bless the way she revealed my fear without mocking it. I bless the quiet power of her presence, the calm light of her reflection, the truth met without needing to shout. Some souls do not enter loudly, but they leave a room inside you rearranged. They make your heart more honest than it was before love arrived there. So if you are listening with a name hidden in your chest, I hope you do not shame yourself for caring. I hope you do not turn tenderness into a crime just because it outlived your plan. The heart is not foolish for remembering what felt true. It is only asking to be guided with wisdom. Let the memory make you kinder, not trapped. Let the longing make you clearer, not desperate. Let the mirror teach you without becoming the only place you look. Love should return you to life, not keep you kneeling before absence forever and silence alone. I am not the same man who first tried to leave. I carry more patience now, more reverence, more willingness to stand still long enough for truth to speak. I know that vulnerability is a doorway, trust is a foundation, intimacy is a room, and growth is the work of keeping that room alive, and meaning is the light that remains when we stop demanding control. He showed me all of that, not by forcing my heart open, but by being the mirror where I finally saw what love was asking me to become with courage, softness, patience, and steady faith. May you be blessed with a love that feels like peace and still calls you higher. May you be brave enough to receive tenderness without running from it, and wise enough to release what cannot be held without bitterness. May every mirror that finds you reveal not only your wounds, but the beauty waiting beneath them. And may she, the one who changed everything without forcing anything, always be honored in the quiet chapel of my heart, not as a wound, but as a blessing, not as chaos, but as calm, not as an ending, but as meaning and grace.